the next team is mine, the Indiana Pacers. This is hard just because
this was the hardest one, except for the next one.
I went with, and it's an older player because I don't really know that you can go with it if we're not picking rookies. Like, do you really think that they're going to get just like a huge season from Brissett or Keelan Martin? I don't know that I see it. I went with Caris LeVert. He is their best point of attack playmaker to me. And a lot of stuff is going to flow through Sabonis and Malcolm Brogdon as well. He is still their best point of attack playmaker to me. He showed it in Brooklyn too. Not that he was better than when Kyrie was there, but he can really run an offense. And the fact that his season was all over the place last year because of his availability upon arriving in Indiana, this is someone who is better at hitting off the dribble jumpers than shooting complementary set shots from the outside. That is, maybe it's a red flag, but like he's eventually going to be an okay catch and shoot guy. And the fact that you have someone who can replace what you were missing from peak Victor Oladipo when he all of a sudden started dealing with injuries and went downhill, like there's not that same explosion there. I don't think like once you get around the basket, but he can get to the line, but more importantly, he's someone who can really hit some tough off the dribble jumpers and then really run your offense from that point of attack. And I think that if he stays fully healthy, which I'm hoping he does, I hope every player does, we're going to look back on this as maybe a fringe all-star campaign for him. It might be too deep in the East when you're looking at just, twos, 2-3s, looking at that sort of field for him to really enter that conversation. But I think he's fully capable of it. And I've been one of the drivers, because there are many, of the Caris LeVert bandwagon for a while. This dude can be really good. And I think that Indiana is still set up to where they need him to be really good. So he'll have the opportunity to be really good on offense and have the ball in his hands, and that he's just going to rise to the occasion there. Maybe that changes if they're like somewhat married to featuring TJ Warren more on ball now that he's healthier. I still think he's probably best suited as someone who spends a lot of time off the ball. And even so, there's a lot of just, when you look at maybe how when they stagger the minutes of some of their best players, Caris LeVert might be some of the connective tissue for like the lineups that don't have Sabonis in them.
It was really hard for me not to go with Caris LeVert here, but I did end up picking TJ Warren because I do think they're going to feature him on the ball. What he was during that brief bubble spurt, that's not indicative of what we should expect here. He's not going to average 31 points a game, but I would not be surprised given not just his skill level, but how much he was developing before he got hurt. I wouldn't be surprised if he's their go-to scorer, like regardless of role. This is a guy who, again, pre-injury was starting to figure out how to draw a little more contact and get to the line. He was starting to show not just a willingness to pass sometimes, but also good instincts when a second help defender came or when he was operating on the roll. Like the passes started to be more intelligent. His defense really started to improve. Like, for whatever reason, a guy who was a total defensive liability entering the NBA suddenly looked buckled down on that end of the floor, which gives him even more of a path to a featured role because he can hold his own on that end now. You're not just sacrificing one end of the court for the other. So because he's been filling in those cracks within his own game, I think he's going to be the guy in Indiana this coming season. No disrespect meant to Domantas Sabonis or Miles Turner, both of whom are fantastic all-star caliber players whose games just aren't suited to be that go-to option. So it's Warren for me, but the connective tissue part of LeVert's game makes him a 1B to me.
And look, you mentioned TJ Warren's defense. That dude, for most of the previous, not last year, the year before, he was guarding number one options, and it was like not getting a lot of help. Like he had to fight
out of nowhere
and all that shit. And yeah, credit to Dan Burke for, he's done a lot when he's in Indiana before, and he's actually no longer with Indiana. So that stings for them. I think it had to be one of those two options, really, to me. I don't know. I don't know what other direction you could go in. And I think TJ Warren's intriguing, especially because he didn't play for much of last year.